And when he heard that, when he came to America and heard that men and women could be divorced for incompatibility, he said, well, in that case, they should all be divorced. Because men and women as such are incompatible. And the whole purpose of marriage is to work through the incompatibility. He said marriage is a duel to the death. He predicted that there would be horrible problems with pollution in the modern world long before really anyone else pointed it out. And yet he also seemed to predict where the modern environmental movement would go off track. Because just as he said the worship of health is unhealthy, he also said the worship of nature is unnatural. And he said the thing to remember about nature is that nature is not our mother, nature is our sister, because we both have the same father. And he also pointed out another modern contradiction in the movement of loving Mother Nature. He said, if nature herself is so kind to Mother, why should anybody be so pessimistic as to shrink from motherhood? He also pointed out there was a contradiction between this return to nature and, on the one hand, and this obsession with technology and progress on the other hand. He said the modern world is a crowd of very rapid racing cars all brought to a standstill and stuck in a block of traffic. That was in 1925, he said. He said in 1930, we thought of many ways of going to the North Pole. He says someday we'll find a way to get to the moon. The only thing we haven't found is why we want to go there. He said we've come up with the best forms of communication in all of history, precisely at the moment when we have nothing to say. And he also pointed out that the strain of modern life was becoming unbearable in the modern world. That people were no longer desiring normal things. They were not desiring marriage anymore, or fair ownership, or worship, and they were no longer valuing the mysterious worth of human life itself. Chesterton said, I suppose there's the last prophecy of his I quote is in 1932. He said that the world was headed towards a new war. It would be the worst war in all of history, and it would start on the Polish border. Now, the problem with listing the prophecies of Chesterton is that it makes him sound like a very gloomy and dark and pessimistic writer, and he's anything but that. He's a very life-affirming and very jovial and bright and happy writer. He's full of joy and full of a sense of wonder, and very much the antidote to the very depressing modern writers that most of us were forced to read when we went to college. And as you know, when you went to college, you were not assigned to GK Chesterton, which I also wasn't assigned. I discovered Chesterton in spite of getting what was considered a good college education. And Chesterton was such a complete thinker. He wrote about everything in all different subjects, but he can't be pigeonholed in one particular department. And he sort of reveals the whole problem with the modern academia, because there's no place to put him. We have the irony of a 300-pound writer who's fallen through the cracks. But it's also the problem that he's always defending the Catholic faith. And that's another reason why there's no place to put him. And there's something else I want to say about being a prophet. To our public education, it is that they purposely don't agree on what the large truths are. And therefore they can't really be responsible for teaching them. And the other problem is that it's only the new things that are taught and not the old things. Chesterton says that in most schools today, students have to be subjected to educational ideas that are younger than they are. And he also says that the government had less power over an individual when it could send him to be burned at the stake than it does now when it sends him to the public school. Compulsory education is a very, very new development in history. And when the state controls that important thing, that important aspect of the development of a child, when that is state controlled, that has given the state more influence over the individual than it has ever had in history. Chesterton says there are no uneducated people. Everybody's educated, only people are educated wrong. We're no longer teaching history, we're teaching hygiene. No longer teaching traditional ideals, but really the fashionable ideals of the governing class of Hudge and Gudge. And we're recruiting nothing but specialists rather than well-rounded and generally informed individuals. And so that we've come to rely on specialists as teachers. We've come to rely on specialists as the counselors and the technicians. And the only persons who seem to have nothing to do with the education of children are the parents. So he sums up, and he also talks about modern sex education, kind of sums up everything about that when he says, how can it be more important to teach a child how to avoid disease than how to value life? All right. Now we've talked about what's wrong with the world in terms of society and Hudge and Gudge and feminism, public education, how they all undermine the family. The other thing that they all undermine, and really are enemies of, in many ways, is the church. The way of the world and the way of the church are completely opposite. They are always going against each other. And when Chesterton became a Catholic, he said one of the reasons he became a Catholic was that it was the only thing that saves a man from the degrading slavery of being a child of his time. The church stands against fashions and fads that come and go. And as he once said, we don't need a church that moves with the world, we need a church that moves the world. So that sometimes means standing up and defending the truth. Because he says if you're loyal to anything, if you wish to preserve it, you have to recognize that it might have enemies. And you have to